Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum. Your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines. It is the 2nd of December 2025. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. My name is Alphonse, Ouma. Let's take a look at the Daily Nation. On the front page, when public schools leave the poor behind is the top story. Now, state faulted for failing to increase funding to match inflation. Here's the grim reality. 117 billion shillings, that is a report from the Auditor General, shows that between 2020 and 2024, public schools faced a funding gap in capitation to the tune of 17 billion shillings, with the special needs secondary schools facing a 50% shortfall. The free primary education capitation per learner has stagnated at 1,420 since 2003. When adjusted for inflation, it is equivalent to about 250 shillings in 2024. Secondary school capitation per learner has remained unchanged since 2018 at 22,244 shillings. Now, approximately 1.13 million children of primary school going age are out of school, and nearly half of secondary school going students are not accessing secondary education at the appropriate age. A secondary school age child from the poorest quintile has a 7 in 10 chance of not being in school, while this is only 3 in 10 for a child from the richest quintile. That story is augmented for you on page 4. Now, on page 7 this morning on politics, Gachagua rattles his opposition allies with Nairobi zoning plan. A fresh storm has hit the united opposition after former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua unveiled a zoning plan that would bar affiliate parties from fielding candidates for governor, MP, and MCA positions in Nairobi. That is augmented for you on page 7. On page 6, Ruto, I will deal with goons. President William Ruto has issued a stern warning against the proliferation of political thugs across the country, declaring that the government will take firm action against those who mobilize youth to unleash violence and disrupt public gatherings. The president directed Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja to move decisively against individuals who hire the youth, saying he will not allow lawlessness to take root. On page 3 this morning, breathalyzers, speed guns to help cut festive season crashes. Now, Kenya's transport sector is bracing for one of its busiest travel periods, with the matatu operators and safety agencies warning of rising cases of reckless driving, fatigue, mechanical neglect, and general indiscipline on major highways. Police have promised enhanced patrols, use of speed guns, and breathalyzers, and setting up of mobile courts to apprehend and fine offenders on the spot. That story is augmented for you on page 3. Let's get up close and candid with the nation on page 2. Funding cuts, rising infections, fragile HIV gains at risk. Now, National Syndemic Disease Control Council boss says Kenya is not doing well in curbing children's infection. The cuts have mainly affected prevention programs since a co-funding model was in place for commodities and treatment. Now, that is all about the concerns, and it's on page 2. Now, just as Kenya's progress in HIV control seemed to stabilize, the country was struck by funding cuts by the United States this year. And for the first time in 3 years, the number of new infections has increased mostly among young people. That story is augmented for you on page 2. On page 3 this morning, speed guns, breathalyzers, on roads in bid to curb crashes. Now, police to also enhance patrols on highways as NTSA and PSV operators to service their speed limiters. Authorities swing into action to bring sanity on the highways as the holidays get underway. That story is augmented for you on page 3. Now, on page 4 this morning, study reveals why learners in public schools lag behind. Now, academics that charge low fees have grown, but they offer substandard education. Oxfam report says children from poor families receive fewer years of schooling than those from rich backgrounds. That story is on page 4 for you. On page 5 this morning, baking boom lures home science tutors. Now, primary driver of the exodus from the classroom is better fortunes that come with pastries making. Now, crisis forces some schools to drop the subject altogether due to unavailability of educators. 26,577 is the number of teachers that TSC lacks, mostly in technical subjects, including home science. Well, that is an opportunity for those in those fields. Now, page 6. Ruto directs police to crack down on goons. Recent report revealed how young people are being used by politicians and business people to cause chaos. Incidents of goons unleashing violence during church political events is on the rise. Now, President William Ruto has issued a warning against the proliferation of political goons across the country, declaring that the government will take firm action against those who mobilize youth to unleash violence and disrupt public gatherings. Speaking during the graduation of 5,892 chiefs and assistant chiefs at the National Police College Embakasi A campus, President Ruto directed Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja to move decisively against individuals who hire the youth, saying he will not allow lawlessness to take root. That story is augmented for you on page 6. On page 7 this morning, Gachagwa's push to ring fence Nairobi seats rattles oppositions. Now, leaders of other parties dismiss proposal and call for unity in the coalition. Former DP says only his DCP party will field candidates for governor, senator, and women rep in the capital city. That story is augmented for you on page 7. Let's move on and take a look at page 8. Now, MPs ask Treasury to bridge auditors' office funding gap. Now, over 12,000 entities now are covered by Office of the Attorney General, bill that guarantees financial independence to be fast-tracked. Now, MPs want the National Treasury to implement interim measures to bridge the Office of the Auditor General's funding gap, as they prioritize enactment of the Public Audit Amendment Bill 2024. The members of the Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee of the National Assembly, in a report to the House, want the OAG's annual budget increased to internationally recognized standards and constitutionally guaranteed minimum of 0.5% of the most recent audited accounts of national revenue to restore its independence. That story is augmented for you on page 8. Now, on page 10 this morning, study 60% of fish sold in Kisumu is contaminated. Experts say aquaculture practices are contributing to growing cases of antimicrobial resistance. Now, researchers says while the pathogen can be eliminated through proper cooking, fish traders and other handlers must practice good hygiene to avoid spread. That story is augmented for you on page 10 this morning. Now, on page 11, privacy breach. Court orders KBC to erase staff facial recognition data. Judge says facial data disqualifies as sensitive personal data that requires heightened safeguards. Court told KBC's management had repeatedly ignored unions' objections. You want to catch up with that story on page 11. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 12. Set ablaze. Young girl still fighting for life 3 months after triple murder of kin. A domestic dispute turned deadly when Hilary Langat attacked his in-laws and daughter. Now, the Bomet incident has sparked outrage and renewed calls for urgent action against rising gender-based violence. Now, when Hilary Langat walked into his mother-in-law's homestead that evening carrying a jerrycan and a walking stick, there were no alarm bells to forewarn the family of the danger ahead. On that fateful evening of August 25th, 2025, Mr. Langat was warmly received by family members who were slightly uneasy about the timing of the unannounced and unusual visit, but chose not to question it. You want to catch up with that on page 12. All right. Now, let's take a look at the expert opinion. Animal cruelty, moral crisis of factory farming. Now, the point is not that these animals are just like humans. They are not. The point is that they are not nothing. Those are sentiments by Faith Gaki, an animal uh, expert. Now, on page 12 this morning, to get to Singapore, drain the swamp. Now, the Asian tiger for economies growth was delivered not just on bricks and mortar, but by a national ethos which demanded honesty in public leadership. Sentiments by Macharia Gaido right there. Now, the lie has been told often enough that Kenyan development indicators at independence were at par with Singapore, Malaysia, and the other Asian tigers who have catapulted themselves from third world missionary to first world prosperity within 2 generations. President William Ruto repeats the lie at every opportunity while trumpeting his grand vision to have Kenya emulate Singapore within a short time. Concern here is not about the lie, but the promise. It is great to have vision. One cannot grow from poverty to wealth unless propelled by ambition and a clear set of goals, says Masharia Gaido. Now, on powering SMEs this morning on DN2 article, sustainable green energy from crop residues. Now, EcoCharge Limited transforms agricultural waste such as sawdust, bagasse, macadamia shells, coffee husks, and other residues into high-quality biomass briquettes. That story is augmented for you on page 2 and page 3 of the article this morning. Now, let's move on and take a look at county news. We start with Nyamira County. 3 MCS deny delegating their votes. Now, the impeachment of Governor Amos Nyaribo has taken a new twist after 3 members of the county assembly denied participating in the voting exercise. Julius Nyang'ana, Elijah Abere, and Priscilla Nyatichi filed a criminal complaint at the Nyali police station in Mombasa under OB 46 25 11 25. At the time, they purportedly delegated their voting rights. That story is augmented for you on page 16 of the Daily Nation. Also this morning, Sakaja rates law will push revenue to 60 billion. Last year, the county collected 13.8 billion shillings. The governor says new legislation will see more parcels of land charged rates. Now, City Hall is banking on the newly enacted National Rating Act 2024 to unlock Nairobi's estimated 60 billion annual on-source revenue potential. The law introduces a framework for county governments to assess and impose rates on land and buildings with a clear valuation and enforcement procedures. That story is augmented for you on page 16 as well. On page 17 in Mandera County this morning, Banisa voters sleep in churches, police stations ahead of election. Now, hotels and guest houses filled up as voters traveled back home to pick new MP. You want to catch up with that story on page 17. In Kajiado County, municipalities struggle to provide services. Over the past 6 years, the Kajiado County government has elevated its satellite towns into municipalities in an ambitious effort to accelerate urban growth. Kajiado Town, which hosts both the county headquarters and key national government offices, has also been promoted to a municipality. Recently, Kitengela Town, one of the county's fastest growing satellite towns, attained the same status. You want to catch up with that on page 17. Let's shift gears and take a look at the international scene. Now, Sudan war survivors. The RSF drove over the injured. Less than half of the 260,000 people in the city before it fell have been accounted for. The fall of El Fasher after an 18-month siege is a particularly brutal chapter in Sudan's civil war. That story is augmented for you on page 18. Now, business news this morning. Kits shortage keeps Kenya Power customers in dark. Now, some have endured delays for more than 20 years. Despite depositing over 930 million, thousands are yet to get connected. The key figure stands at 16,422, which is the potential customers that were affected by June 2025. All right. Let's take a look at sports news now. We start with athletics. Better fun experience at Chepsaita Cross Country. Now, Kenya to host World Cross Country Gold Tour event on Saturday. The start has been moved closer to VIP area and the spectator zone for a better view. You want to catch up with that on page 26. On page 27 this morning, James strong Arsenal escaped thrashing by 10-man Chelsea. We played 60 minutes with 10 men, he says of Sunday's 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge. Guardiola brushes off a scrappy win over Leeds before Fulham test. That's all about the English Premier League. And playing tonight, Bournemouth versus Everton at 10:30 p.m., Fulham versus Manchester City at 10:30 p.m., and Newcastle United versus Tottenham Hotspurs at 11 p.m. Now, on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, we go back to athletics. Wanyonyi sets sights on ultimate championships. World Athletics rewards athletes who excelled in the ending year. The 21-year-old was crowned 2025 World Athletics Track Athlete of the Year on Sunday. That story is augmented for you on the cover page. And as we conclude, steep learning curve for Nairobi United in Africa Cup. Now, it is the aftermath of Nairobi United's 1-0 home loss to Asmeima Union of the DRC in their 2025-2026 CAF Confederation Cup Group B match, their second defeat in the competition's round-robin phase after losing 3-0 away to Morocco's Wydad Casablanca on November 23rd. Salim Ali, Nairobi United's technical director, appears at the brightly lit mixed zone at Kasarani, coming face to face with cameras and microphones waiting for him and his players. The stationary cameras and stretched microphones transmit pressure to explain and met expectations, and Ali lightens the mood before a question is asked. That story is on the cover page. And that brings us to the tail end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for staying with us and for choosing to watch Younib TV, the best youth television network in Africa. My name is Alphonce Ouma. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Tuesday ahead. Bye-bye for now.